Is welcome to this webinar on, now I might have one more technical issue, I don't, that's fine. So basically, this webinar is on the portfolio work that's required for tutors in assessing work in centres. And just, is anyone seeing, I've one other thing hopping up on my screen, I hope nobody can see that. Our Good News Friday, no?
Yes, we can.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, we can see that, yeah.
Yeah.
Only the PowerPoint, is it?
No, we can see your Good News Fridays.
Joan,
Joan, I think you have to open Teams and click on your initials and sign out.
It's gone. Yeah, it's gone. Okay, so the overview of this is Jennifer Dowling and myself work in NALA here on the Learn with NALA assessment. We would kind of work with the tutors. So between Jennifer, myself, and the team of tutors, we do the assessing. And so a lot of people might be aware of Right On. We've assessed over 40,000 certs for 10,000 learners over 11 years. And the process, most rounds, we do about 2,000 awards. So we're working with very high volumes. And we need to be sure that the work that comes into us is correct and is up to the standard. So basically, in the centres, you guys as tutors are working with the learners. You know the learners, you know the standard that they're working to, and you know the learning outcomes you work with. You know when they're ready for pre-assessment. You know when they're ready for assessment. So you know those learners. We don't know them. So basically, from our perspective here in NALA, we want to ensure that everybody who's working, all the centre know what's required in the portfolio, and they have a clear understanding of the QQI standards for each portfolio. So we're coming up to round 32 now, and we just want to go through the few key points that are required for the portfolios for the learners to get their certification. So our deadline is beginning in November, 8th November at midnight. So one of the many advancements with our website, the new Learn with NALA online, is the level of control that you guys as tutors have over your whole classes. This is one of the key things that people were saying they wanted more control. So we've worked the system so you guys have a greater degree of management of your classes. So that's all available to you now. And you can see exactly where a learner is in the learning process. And you can also view their portfolio work online. So you have access to all of your learners, even if they're not beside you. So centre tutors should have either completed face-to-face training pre-March or else have attended our training online. And we've quite a lot of training available, so please take the time to have a look at the videos. As centre tutors, you should also be aware of our memorandum of understanding with you. And the memorandum of understanding is available as an attachment to this webinar. Now, it's also available on our website, on the regular nala.ie website. We also have, Katrina did up centre tutors, which are really clear and really, really useful. So again, they can be downloaded from various points. They're attached to this webinar, and they are really, I suppose, what you need to have beside you when you're working on this. So make sure that you have access to those key documents and key videos. Also, Katrina has prepared a help desk section that's there for you. So that's just been launched, I think, yesterday, Katrina, isn't it? So it's just been launched and that's available. So yeah, it's a matter of finding out for yourselves what's available and how it best works for you. Some people might prefer the videos, some people the manuals. The help section is there as well. And of course, staff and NALA, the free phone number, which could be answered by Jennifer, Sandra or Elaine, they will also be able to help and are more than willing to help. So let's get down to the assessing. So as you all know, assessing is a key part of the teaching and learning process. The pre-assessment activities, you as tutors can identify when the learners are assessment ready when the time is right for them to complete the assessment. So I suppose to encourage the learners to wait until they're assessment ready, and if even when they do the assessment and it's not standard, you just go back, suggest what needs to be changed, work on the learning outcomes, and make whatever improvements that need to be done, and then redo the assessment. So the way that it is, you guys as tutors are the first assessment for the learner's work. So we shouldn't really be getting work in NALA unless it has reached the standard. I know when I worked in a centre, I always thought about myself as wearing two hats, my tutoring hat and my assessing hat. So you tutored the learners, you worked with them, worked on the learning points, you know, did all the necessary scaffolding, and then depending on whether you're working at level 2 or level 3, you know, the levels of support. And then once you come to the point where you want to assess to see where they are and to get them to do the assessments for the certs, that you actually, you know, put on your tutor, you put on your assessing hat for them, I suppose, and you actually begin to assess their work. So, I mean, everybody is familiar with QQI levels, and they are nationally agreed standards. So we all are working to the same standard and the same level. And the whole point of certification is that the learner can achieve that standard, but can also achieve it when they have the cert. So it's not about getting it right on the day. It's about getting it right and that the learner has it in the long term. So as I say, I always kind of worked with my tutoring hat and my assessing hat, and that helped me by two roles that I, as one individual, have to carry out when working with learners. So you guys are coming from registered centres, so you shouldn't actually need NALA assessing tutors. So at level 2, Jennifer and I would do the follow up, and at level 3, we have a team of assessors who will follow up with you. But ideally, we shouldn't have a huge amount of following up. The youth system is super. We can give feedback to learners directly. So it works really, really well for that. So if work isn't at the standard, we will need to make tutors, and that does take up a lot of time. And effectively, we are quite a small team here. So I suppose we all need to work together as cooperatively as we can to, to make sure that this process is as smooth as possible. And all the time and effort goes into the teaching and the learning with the learner, and that you guys aren't tied up with assessment. It's just something extra that happens. Also around assessing, like the website is the teaching and learning, and it's an assessment tool. So in addition, and I think you all should probably know this, we have a tool to recognize prior learning. So if a learner comes in and does the start test, gets it perfectly correct, they then are brought to the end test. If they get that correct, they then actually have completed, they've shown that they know all of the learning outcomes for that award, and they can get the cert, and they might not actually be brought to the teaching and learning area. You're aware of the RPL function to this. So if you have somebody who's got no certificates and maybe is at level 3, they could just fly through a level 2 cert and just get the cert and, you know, have it there. So general points to remember when working on the portfolios. On the additional assessments, so I'm talking about the extra assessments that are required. All portfolio work should have correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation. If a question is asked, it should be answered with a properly constructed sentence and not a single word or list. However, if a learner is asked for a list, then they should get a list should be completed. Another issue that we often find is learners are asked for examples of something, and they might just put in one example. We really need 2, but ideally 3 examples. You know, examples plural, we need examples plural. And it's also about the learner identifying the instruction they're given and that they're taking responsibility. They see that they look for examples, they give examples. When doing the list, if bullets are used for one list, they should use it for all of the lists in that assessment. And equally, if they do bullets and put in their list of answers and then a full stop, they should be consistent right the way through. So we are looking for an element of consistency at level 3. So you're kind of working with the learner. It's about the is what they need, but also consistency in how they're actually presenting the work to make it easy for the reader. We still have some people who use a small I for themselves. So always remember that capital I, you know, and it's not just about the assessment, it's about the learning. Generally as well, single words aren't acceptable. And most importantly, when the extra assessments are being done, even if they're passed, we need to have all of the online work complete. So you as a tutor can look in the back end of your classes online, and you can see what questions the learners haven't completed, and you can then direct them to complete the questions. And once that is done, the system will pick them up if they have the online work complete and they have the extra assessments which have been passed by you. You're telling us in NALA standard. We do a quick double check in NALA to make sure that they are. And then the learner, you will see that they'll become successful on their screen, and that means they will get their cert. Okay? So they're the general points of the work. So at level 2, there are extra assessments needed. One of them is for listening and speaking, and the other is writing. So the listening and speaking portfolio, Jennifer will probably run through that with you. Jennifer, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Joan.
Great.
Hi, everybody.
Okay.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. So the listening and speaking is generally done through myself on the free phone. But if I'm not available, I will call you back to arrange the portfolio work with your students. So once assessment ready, the learner can phone 1800 2020 65 between 9:30 and 5 p.m. to complete the assessment. So as I said, if I'm not available, I will call you back. If the assessment can't be carried out there and then we can make an appointment. Assessment calls for learners can also be arranged, but if a learner does leave a voice message, that's not classed as the listen and speaking assessment. I do have to speak to the learner. The learner should have completed the necessary learning and pre-assessment. So as in all of the lesson blocks should be completed first before completing the portfolio section. So if I check the learner's content and I notice that there's some lesson blocks not completed, I will ask the learner to complete the lesson blocks first and then call me back to complete the assessment. Learners must be able to complete a simple speaking and listening task and engage in a meaningful way with the assessor in NALA. So that would generally be myself, or if I'm unavailable or on holidays, then it would be Joan that will complete the assessment. So tutors must ensure that the online learning is completed in full. So that's all the lesson blocks. Learners will be asked just a couple of things that I will ask in the assessment. So learners will be asked their name, their address. I will ask them to spell a word in the address, their PPS number, their date of birth, and what they generally thought of using the website. They will also be asked to spell one of the words in the address. So please do practice this assessment before the learners contact myself to complete it over the phone. So I'll just hand you back over then to Joan, because Joan would assess the writing.
Yeah, sometimes Jennifer, a learner will phone and you know, they won't really have worked and practiced the conversation they need to have. So it's about making sure that the learner ready, and you know, just makes it easier for everybody if the learner is ready for Jennifer. And she's very nice on the phone, aren't you, Jennifer?
Yes, very nice. As
Very
you're
nice.
probably aware, I've probably spoken to some of you already over the phone or by email.
And it's not about the learner being afraid or whatever, it's just that we need to get them at the level where they're able to do what they need to do per the level 2 award. Okay, so if we move on then to the writing. So the learners must handwrite 5 complete sentences on a single topic. The piece of writing must have correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And it's interesting, you know, at level 5, I think, I'm not sure if there isn't the same emphasis on spelling, grammar and punctuation, whereas it must be correct for us here now. The sentences can be really short and really simple, or they can be more complicated. It's whatever the learner, you know, is able to do. And if a learner just wants to write 5 simple short sentences, that is fine. That's the standard. I'd be very careful about letters. We find a lot of learners, you know, haven't got the concept of capital letters. So maybe the simple sentences won't require capital letters. So the writing then should be uploaded to the portfolio or posted into us in free. All the centre tutors must assess the writing before it comes to us. So it should be at that standard. So you as a tutor would have checked for 5 complete sentences, starting with a capital letter, ending with a full stop. They're complete sentences, they make sense, they're on one topic, and there aren't kind of any random capital letters in the middle of the sentence. And you also must make sure the work is complete. So there's an example of a very simple, 5 sentences. The requirement for the dog's name to be a capital letter. But there's no other example of a capital letter in the sentence by the beginning of the word, and that's fine when they use the dog's name. And if the dog's name hadn't a capital L, it would have to go back, okay? And if you only use the dog's name with capital L once, with a small L once, we can accept 1 mistake, so they get away with it. And then you can have a more kind of complicated sentence about, by the learners. And also, you can see there where a full stop is put in. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not testing handwriting, but we must be able to read the handwriting. And on that point, so you as tutors need to watch for misplaced capital letters. F is a difficult word for learners to write, and we notice a lot of the time it's not a capital S in the sentence, but it looks like it. And sometimes it might be a bigger S later on in the middle of the word. And when you've got a good example like that, it's fine to go through. But if you're unfortunate that the capital S is like a capital, not a big S, we will come back to you. Also, we find the positioning of F's and G's on the line can be problematic and unclear. And make sure the full stops are clear. Now, as I said, we're not testing handwriting, so I don't want you to make that mistake. But sometimes the handwriting, can look as if they've made a mistake when they haven't. And don't forget about our Better Handwriting for Adults, which is available and a super resource for dealing with those kind of finer things. And they are finer things. And I also appreciate sometimes learners, you work with, you can say, well, maybe you should write this a different way, and they just don't. And that's life. You're not going to force anyone to do anything. So around the level 2 portfolio work, has anybody any questions? Is it clear enough?
Yes.
Okay, so we've go through. I've spent a bit between getting started. So at level 3, at the moment we have 3 awards available, and they're career preparation, maths, and personal effectiveness. And communications will be available in a matter of days. So as you know, the site is under development, and there are new parts coming to it every day. So the assessments are the way for the learner to showcase their work, and it's really vital that they're completed correctly. The validation that we have allows for a single error to take place in the work, so the bar is high. So in NALA, we rely on a single piece of work. The learner has one shot at the IV and the EA stages. And if there's a query at the IV or EA in a centre, you have a whole portfolio available to show that the learner has achieved the standard. So we simply don't have, so the learner really needs to put in the best effort that they can into that assessment and understand why we're really pushing them. So the tutors should work on pre-assessments to ensure the learner has achieved the learning and is assessed. So for career prep, we have 2 additional tasks. The first one is the learner must download a form and they must fill it. So the form looks for information, CV, their name, their address, their contact number, their email, their date of birth. Now, make sure that they are done correctly with correct capital letters. If you're looking at qualification name, awarding body and year awarded, make sure they're all consistent and in order. The same with listing their jobs they might have done, the company, the job title, the start date and the end date, and then their achievements and their skills and their interests. So have them all nicely presented and consistent, because it's all kind of learning for the tutor, and that's what they will be putting into their CV. So they need to have it consistent and at the standard. Again, I have a sample. I won't go through that now, but you'll be able to click into it later. Just watch for capital letters. In the sample, people might have Dublin as a small letter. Watch the ordering of the jobs, that they're consistent, and very, very importantly, that the work is individual to each learner. And this, at level 2, it came up once where we had a centre and the learners worked on a selection of about 12 sentences, and each learner selected 5. But when they came in, it was very clear what had happened in the centre, and we in NALA weren't confident that those learners were able to write 5 sentences. They could write 5 of 12. So we had to go back to them with the tutor and not accept that work. And the same happens in career in the level 3 sometimes. Tutors, if the learner's work is very similar, we will spot that and we'll send it back to you. And they'll have to be redone. So I can't emphasize the need for the work to be individual to each learner, okay? So the other part of the career path is the task 2, which is and there's a process in place for the interview. The learner or the tutor needs to call the email to request the mock interview. You need to come to us for it. Again, the learners must be prepared by the centre for our mock interview, and they must be assessment ready. If a tutor wants to call the free phone, so if a learner wants to call themselves, we can arrange it individually. Sometimes tutors like to call us and we arrange the interviews in a block. And if you're doing that, we ask the tutor to have the learners' names, the mock job they're applying for, the best available time, and a contact number for the learner in case they're not in the centre the day it's happening. And that's particularly important right at the moment with the current situation. So Jermaine is listening in there and the interviews. The reason we have one person doing the interviews is around consistency of standard and equality for all learners. So there's a list of jobs. I won't go through them now. And also around career preparation, you're basically preparing people for an interview. And, when we started this a number of years ago, a phone interview was strange. In the past 7 months, a phone interview has become more regular. So for the phone interviews, make sure that people prepare for them as if they're a real interview. They put in the effort and they put in the time. Make them, have that they're in a comfortable place. It's quiet, it's private. Advise them that other people, say if there's other people, let them know that there shouldn't be noise in the background, all of that type of thing. They should have a copy of their CV close by so they know what they've said, and have a paper and pen at hand. So also they need to prepare and practice, practice, practice. And also you need task 1 to be complete before you attempt task 2. So we can't do the interview until you've done the other one. And thank you very much, Jennifer, for bringing that to my attention. Okay. And before I leave that, Jermaine, would you like to hop in and say a quick word there?
Thank you, Joan. Yes, what I will say is preparation. You've mentioned that. And if they would research the job, I know if they might want to be a waiter or somebody in a bar. Bar person, but they should research the job well and be enthusiastic about it. Sometimes I've asked people, would you like the job? And they say no. And, that wouldn't be a good answer when they've gone for the job. Another one is make sure they list all the courses they have done or they're doing. Sometimes they forget things or they don't bother telling. They should sell themselves well, and particularly if they're going for a real interview, that would be important. I don't think there's anything else, Joan. I think you've covered everything else. I tried to talk to the learner beforehand. It's not always possible, particularly if they're in a centre. but it does put them at ease. You know, it's not easy to do a phone interview, and I'm well aware of that. But if they hear my voice beforehand, sometimes I think it might help. I'm not sure, but anyway. And they're all very well prepared. The standard is very high. I'm surprised at how high it is, and I shouldn't be, but I am. And you know, some of the questions are standard questions. So if they're very nervous, I tell them to practice well and to know the standard questions they might be asked, and that helps with their nervousness and gives them confidence. I think that's all, Joan, if anybody wants to ask me about it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask Jermaine? No. Okay.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And it's a really good, you know, module for learners, and especially now, you know, to get the experience of an interview on the phone practiced is great. But as Jermaine said, it's making sure that all the practices be done with you, role plays, etc., etc. As tutors, you know them best, you know the learners best. So at level 3 in maths, there are 3 tasks. We've divided it into 3 drawings, a measurement task. So for the 3 drawings, here is your, you know, what the learners are asked to do. You might want to give them that actual assessment, or you might want to write up one for yourself. But if you're writing for yourself, make sure you keep the actual requirements we have, where we're looking for a house that's rectangular shape, so we need a rectangle. Square windows, we need square windows. We don't say how many. We need a triangular roof with a 30-degree pitch. So when, again, this is the individuality. We shouldn't be getting the same drawing from the whole centre. All learners should have different drawings, but they have those factors, those elements, the rectangle, square, windows. So there must be more than 2, but they can have 3, they can have 5, they can have 20 windows. It doesn't really matter. And they need the triangular roof, again, the 30 degrees. They need to do a circle of 50 millimeters in diameter, which represents the magnitude of 1 meter. They need to understand scale, and they must mark scale on this. They must mark the degrees on the angle of the roof. And actually, I'm sorry, this is not the assessment. I don't know what this is what we tell you. You do up the assessment. Your playing field at a scale of 1,000. So you know, and I know the field is going to be, if it's 100 meters by 40, you've got to draw the scale down, and they've got to know what the scale is. And the same, they must mark the area that's the 4 centimeters, and that's the 100, that's the 10 centimeters. So they must mark that on the form, on their assessment. So 3 pieces of drawing on 1 page with their name on it. And effectively, here's an example, but I wouldn't expect you to show this to learners. But this is what we're looking for. We need to see the scale. We need to see the centimeters marked. We need to see the 30 degrees on the house. But remember, we need to see squares, rectangles, and the triangle. But they all should be different. Circle and the other rectangle are fixed. So house drawing must be different for each learner. To use a compass is tricky. The amount of times we have to return maths because the circle isn't done accurately. We have a 1 millimeter margin of error allowance. So practice, practice, practice. And also there are other ways of drawing circles, and you know, so the learner needn't use a compass. And but it's important that they're labeled, and that the key thing is, and you are the ones as tutors who know this, the learner is expected to know measure, scale and maths, mathematical terms, and you are the one who knows whether they know that. You're then sending in this piece to show that they do, and that whether they're asked to scale something 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1, that they understand what they have to do and how they do it. For the measurement, again, I'm not going to go through the sample, but they've got to download the form, fill out the, sorry, I'm just going to go back to the maths. At the moment, you need to post in the maths, because when you upload it, the download, a little bit of a glitch, and the download isn't representative of the actual measurement, and we can't measure it. So we need the maths sent into us still to free post, okay? So 3, the house, the rectangle and circle must come into the post for the moment. The measurement then, they download the form, they fill in the answers, they use properly constructed sentences, ensure it's correct spelling, grammar, punctuation. If lists are used, they must be consistent and use a metric, not imperial. A common mistake is using the wrong spelling for meter, the American spelling. At level 3, we're looking at meters and kilometers if they're talking about the distance they walk. And it makes sense at level 3 if they want to round up from 2.4 kilometers to 2, round down, or 2.6, round up to 3. So we're happy to take rounding. Again, it's the individuality of each learner. So if a centre says that everybody walks 3 kilometers to the centre, we'll be asking questions about that. So just make sure it's individual to everybody. And one exception is if everybody has measured the room that they're in, that's where it would be acceptable. The room is the same. So in that case, you'd write, you know, this is the room of the classroom where we're studying, okay? And then the survey. The survey, you download the form, fill in the answers, again, the correct spelling, grammar, punctuation, and again, the individuality for each learner. So moving on then to personal effectiveness, it's a learning plan. You download the form, fill in the answers, and ensure the correct spelling. Now, I know Weave Centre has applied this year, and all of the learners, the first question is, what do you think are the most important values you hold? And the centre, every single learner has the same 3 values. Now, they're in a different order. And as they go down, you know, some of the answers are different, but clearly it's a discussion that was held in the class, and you know, it's about really pulling out the individuality for each learner. So I can't be strong enough in saying that really we need to get individual answers. So make sure that the learners are all doing, you know, some things will obviously be the same. It's individual to them and they put the work into it. So you as centre tutors must assess the work at the standard before it's uploaded. And you have to ensure that all the online work is complete before you submit it. And we do allow for 1 mistake in each portfolio, which is, you know, it's hard. It's a lot. So basically, we'll be here to work with you if you have any queries. And between Katrina's videos, the manual that she's done up, and the phone line here, and also the help videos, you should be able to work through this. But we are there to support you at any point, and we only enjoy chatting to tutors and talking about the website and the learners. So do feel free to ring us, even though we have those other items available to you: the videos, the help, and the manual. Okay. So at this stage, has anyone any questions about work? Is it clear enough? Happy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So just in general, through telephone interviews, phone Nala, and Jennifer is probably a person to ask it. So just be free to contact us at any time. Our door is always open. The site is still under development, and we really welcome any feedback from you, though we might not be able to make changes immediately. You know, there's a huge amount of work, as you can all imagine, with this. If you see any typos or anything, just note the screen that they're on, and we can try to rectify them. So thanks a million, and thank you very much for using Learn with Nala, and we hope you enjoy using it, and that we hope you get, you know, good value out of the new facilities that are available to you on the back end, where you've access to what's going on in your class and to what learners are doing. And it's probably particularly useful at the moment with learners maybe not making classes. Fergus or Katrina or Jennifer, anyone else like to say anything?
Yeah, I'll come in there. Yeah, I'll come in there, Joan. Joan, can you hear me?
Yeah, super.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, so yeah, there was a webinar that was due to happen on Monday, which would have run through what Joan has introduced there about this concept that we need you as tutors to check the grades to make sure that all the end tests are successfully completed before portfolio work is being submitted. And that's really important because obviously a lot of time goes into checking the portfolio work and giving constructive feedback. And that time is wasted if the learner hasn't done all the steps beforehand, which would be the end tests. So I'm going to run through that in a webinar today, which is happening at 1 o'clock. It was due to have happened last Monday, and unfortunately we had technical issues. So I'm running through it again today at 1. I've put the link where you can register for it into the questions so that you should all have it. If you can't attend, I appreciate that it might be short notice and that it's a lot to take in, this and the other webinar. So I will record it, and I'll put the recording up onto the NALA website as well. And you can contact myself or Jennifer or Joan if you need, if you can't find the recording. And as Joan said, there are a lot of videos that we're working on, and guides as well that we're putting up onto the site. So I think Joan has very clearly gone through all the work that's needed from the portfolio side, and in the webinar that I'll do at 1 o'clock today, I'll go through checking the grades that leads up to that point where the portfolio work is submitted.
Okay, that's super. Thanks a million, Katrina. Okay, so that's grand. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you,
Thank
Joan.
you.
Okay, so I'm going to turn off now, and any queries, Jennifer, myself, or Katrina. Okay?
Thank you.
Enjoy the long
you.
weekend, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.